Yep. Welcome everybody to the Speed Bylaw hearing. The open session will be recorded for members of the public. It's new to me to run the first hearing, so bear with me and go through. So declaration of interest, just to make sure everyone knows the declaration of interest. Submitters that wish to be heard, we've got to speak for 5 minutes, is that correct, Wayne?
Yep, correct, yep.
And at the end of that, the members will be asked questions. And once no more questions, ask more submitters. So if we're here already, 9:30 till 10, we've got James Dicey.
He's just trying to join.
Just trying to join on Zoom. Yeah. So bear with us for all right. So we'll talk before we're waiting for him to join. Richard, if you'd like to come and speak to your submission since we're waiting for a link into James Dicey. So Richard Davison.
Just sit here or?
Yep.
Okay. Can we promote?
Yeah. No, definitely, mate.
I've only submitted and concentrated on one area, which is dear to my heart. Family having lived there for the last 114 years, so Inster Road at the Clyde Bridge so my submissions and requests, which I note are repeated by 3 or 4 other submitters, and I very much support what they've had to say as well. They're along the same lines. This stretch of road from the Clyde Bridge to Hawksman Road, kilometre or so maybe at the most. Just quickly thinking about it, I can think of at least 9 accidents on that bit of road, including 1 fatal in my days. It's been prone to quite a number of accidents, some of them quite serious. The fact that it is that area now is a residential subdivision and is very likely to increase in its intensity and size by subdivisions on the other side of the road in the near future, is going to increase the number of people that are using that bit of road, walking, biking, and whatever. The fact that the sides of the road don't have, as you would expect in a rural area, what has been a rural area to have any paths or walkways or whatever. I don't have a particular issue with that. If they were there, it gives a bit of guidance to people as to where to walk and all the rest of it. But there are certainly children not, because my property and workshop, I'm there all day, every day. I see, dozens, hundreds of people walk up and down that road and cycle, etc. The intention of extending the 50k zone from what is just about 50 metres from my workshop door along to 20 metres on the Alexandra side, or the southern side of Paulin Road. I support that, but my submission is that it doesn't go far enough. The vehicles coming the other way from the south, from Conroy's End up, for them to have to slow from 100k to 50k in 20 metres just simply does not make sense at all. I just cannot understand the logic of why that has been put in. There is no transition zone whatsoever between the 100k and the 50k. It is just 20 metres and you're in a 50k zone with the entrance into that main subdivision. My suggestion is that the 50k be extended down to Hawksman Road to Picnic Gully, which is only 300 or 400 metres further along. So that's the end of the Picnic Gully subdivision. And then a transition zone, which I feel and I believe should always be in place, no matter whether the transition from 100 to 50k, a transition zone for there back along, back south towards the southern end towards Conroy's. However long a transition zone needs to be, I'm not a roading engineer, so I can't say how long that should be, but my suggestion would be that it be, certainly a few hundred metres, maybe back along to the substation, which is, 400 or 500 metres back further along. I noticed another submitter submitted that that transition should go back to Hanning Road, which is another few hundred metres further south again. Anyway, it doesn't really worry me, but the reason for that is that when you're coming from the south, from Conroy's end into that, to where I'm suggesting the transition zone being, when you come to Hawksman Road, Bracknell Gully, it is a very bad bend, and as I said, there has been at least one fatal accident here. I can well remember and recall because people who in my next door neighbour who passed away. As you come into that bend, it's slightly rising road and it turns to the right, and you cannot see over and around that bend. So I'm suggesting that the 70k transition zone be installed, and then it transitions from 70 to 50k at that point at Hawksman Road, etc.
Actually 5 minutes, but just.
I'm sorry. Quick. My suggestion is that that this be done now in this process, rather than go to the time, trouble, and expense of doing it in a year or 2 years' time when the subdivisions, further subdivisions are taking place.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I have one. Thank you for that. I'm just, with regards to, actually, and it may even just be for Julie in relation to that transition zone.
Yes, so hi Richard. So 70k transition zones what they do it down on the Tyree really well, main road going into Dunedin. They'll have a warning that it's 50k ahead, a couple of hundred metres before 50k. So instead of it actually being a speed limit change, it's a warning that. So you're suggesting 50k out to Hawksburn Road?
Yes, just to the end of the subdivision.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then where was the 70k to, Richard?
Well, whatever.
Yeah,
As the transition.
Yeah. So
Whatever distance the transition zone is.
We went to Hawksburn Road, and then we did a
Signage.
coming up to the 50k's.
Well, it's not very far, is it, from where
No.
this looks great, so it's kind of logical it goes on the other side of the road, that seems. But we can discuss that.
Am I allowed to ask questions in reply?
Can do that.
Why are transition zones, which are in place all around the country, all of a sudden now illegal or not allowed to be
We know
implemented?
that it's a national, they've set a new national guideline that we have to follow to set speed limits, and they've taken that away. So that's a Waka Katahi, or the New Zealand Transport Agency, and it's been put into legislation recently. So
And it's not their
yeah,
road, is it?
it's not council making that call. It's been a government call.
I think we'll have another hearing. That is just dumb and stupid, and my response to that is that you can put as many signs as you like up, and I see a lot of people have made submissions about that. People just don't take any notice of it.
And unfortunately, that's not, we can't fix driver behaviour. Yeah, so.
Fully understand.
If we could, we would be doing very well, but that's where our job is, to make sure that that driver behaviour is actually saying, right, you're going to have that speed zone come up. And I know exactly what you're talking about, Julie. It's right at the little Irish, on those shops before you come into the 80k zone.
Yeah.
So you actually in that
And
area.
they make signs.
Yes, and it's so, I mean, that's something that we can do.
The cars would be down, don't they?
Yes,
I know exactly what she's talking about, and I know that when you take your foot off a normal automatic car, it don't slow down very quick, and I know that when I go to the meeting, I'm still doing more than the speed limit when I hit that sign, unless you use your brakes.
Yes.
But with this particular bad bend, and that's where the traffic accident took place.
Thanks for that. Well, any questions, Tony, you're up?
No, thank you, Richard.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Cheers.
I've got James, William Paul.
Right, so we're just going to wait now for James, who's our first minute, and we'll get him on. Give him another call in a minute, if you're on.
Yep. We've got
What do you want to do now?
Tony.
Tony.
Tony, might as well jump in there while Well, James is on the phone.
Doesn't he know?
Well, Session 188. Go ahead.
Right, morning everybody, thanks very much for your time. I want to talk specifically about Dunstan Road and Springvale Road. I live in Arnott Street in Alexandra, and I go to Clyde quite a bit. I oppose the changes for various reasons. I've driven that road thousands of times over 40 years, so I've seen it change a little. I think it's a good long road. It has great visibility, whether you're driving on it or whether you're pulling out onto it from the driveways along the road. But it's quite an important thoroughfare for public users. There's a lot of people in my position that use that road to get from Alexandra to Clyde or Alexandra to Cromwell or vice versa. And you want to get down the original way to Knots. I really can't see any issue with the safety of that road. Like I said, it's a good long straight road, good visibility. If you're pulling out onto the road, you generally got visibility for hundreds of metres in any direction. I can't see how you could say it's an unsafe road to use. And when it comes to imposing speed limits, I think they should be the last option that are considered for whatever reason that you want to change things. There's ways that you can make roads safer. You can get better visibility. It's already been done at the old racecourse. The willow trees were cut down, making it a lot easier to see a little further as you did get onto some little curves. Warning signs can be used, of course, and more extreme cases, rumble strips across roads, quite a good way of getting somebody's attention that something's about to change on the road ahead. I believe that drivers generally drive to what they feel a naturally safe sort of speed. Keeping it at 100 would allow people to drive at 100 if the traffic conditions and the weather conditions are suitable. Also see examples of the natural speed reduction. If you look at Clyde outside Oliver's, proposed change down to 30 kilometres an hour. I'm not sure that make much difference because I don't see people driving more than 30 kilometres an hour. Anyway, it's quite narrow. Generally, it's cars, people, and drivers. Most of us, vast majority, I think, are reasonable drivers and will adjust their driving accordingly. If you reduce speed limits, there's a risk of complacency. If people are pulling out onto a road and they expect traffic to be, say, at 80 kilometres an hour, and somebody either A, doesn't see the signs or doesn't seem to think that the road is that bad that they should reduce it, one day somebody's going to go through there, someone's going to pull out expecting traffic at a certain speed, and that's when you can get problems. The sort of national ideology of bringing speed down, NZTA are accused drivers, of course, it's a little bit of zealotry. There's an article here I found on the 12th of May, sort of addressing that type of issue, and there's a guy who knows a lot about driving called Greg Murphy. I'm sure all of you have heard of him. He's a driver trainer and a big safety advocate, and he's not in favour of these big droppings of speed limits. He states here, he says the road to zero is a laudable but unachievable goal, and he says that NZTA seems to be focused on reducing speeds first and then ignoring people who oppose it. And I guess their philosophy is going to filter down to local government. I know they look after the state highways. But he said here that what's happening is drivers are being dumbed down. They quite capable of driving at 100 kilometres an hour anyway. This is the vast majority that drive completely at 100 kilometres an hour, doing the right thing, be focused, and they're driving tens of thousands of kilometres a year. Every driving tens of thousands of kilometres every year quite safely. So you're just dragging these people down, and that's the majority of people, to a nanny kind of situation. And I believe that. I'm not a big fan of nanny state type stuff. And he says here quite often that it's used the Napier Taupo Road, and a friend who lives up there, and it doesn't matter what people said, they got the speed limit anyway, even though most people were opposed it. And he goes on saying how they're spending a lot of money, millions of dollars in fact, on their pretty awful ads. You would have seen some of the Road to Zero ads. And I don't think there is a lot of public support. The AM show a couple of weeks ago stated that they had 88 spin doctors to try and push this narrative. This was a popular thing with the public. I don't believe you need to have 88 people trying to push your narrative. They seem to be taking it their own initiative to do their own thing. And in particular, with Dunstan Road and Springvale Road, I'm not sure what reducing the speed limits are actually going to solve. I'm not aware of it being a real big crash area. Brandy Hill, of course, awful bit of road just around the corner, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the thoroughfare. So I'm not sure what changing the speed limit will actually do apart from annoy people. Obviously, when you're making these decisions, you're trying to balance the safety and risk. I don't see that it's a particularly risky road to drive. Like I said, I've driven it thousands of times.
That's your 5 minutes, Tony.
Okay. I'll shut up.
Questions? Tony?
Dunstan Road, you've driven it thousands of times over many years, so you will have seen the changes. I would be interested to know what your self-assessment of your speed is between that bit from sort of the racecourse to Springvale Road. Because you said people naturally reduce their speeds or drive at the speed that they feel that they should be driving. What's your speed through that area?
By the time I get onto that corner, I'm starting to slow down anyway. I know there's a corner coming up, so I don't like using my brakes unnecessarily, so I'll naturally start slowing down as I come around there. Because I know I've got to give way. Probably 1 in 20 times I'll have to stop at that corner. If you're talking about going from Alex to Clyde, or are you talking about coming the other way?
Coming from Alex to Clyde, yeah. Through that bit past the mini golf and the Orchard Garden.
That's part of that, obviously. But you are aware that there's driveways there. You can see signs for like Orchard Gardens and stuff like that. And as a local, I guess it's no problem. You sort of know what the road is, gives a little bit of an advantage. But you're naturally slowing down because you know you're going to potentially have to stop. But you will be being very careful as you're going on to Springvale Road. That's part of when you're pulling onto a 100k road. It's driver, be aware, be focused. And yeah.
And how are you finding it with one thing I've noticed in the last few years, the amount of cyclist traffic crossing, both on their bike and pushing their bike, in particular at Hillview Road, where they're going across to get up to the wineries on Hillview Road, and then also at that airport, now Coates Road intersection, to go across to the biking and walking tracks up through there. And Dunstan Road is a wide road. It's quite a lot of road to get across as a pedestrian or cyclist. How have you noticed the change in that behaviour at those two intersection points over the last few years?
It's definitely a lot more, definitely a lot more cyclists getting around. But you are aware of them. I mean, when you're in a vehicle, you've got a responsibility, you should be switched on. Great visibility, so it's not as if they're leaping out of bushes on the side of the road. Okay, any cyclist you can see a long way away. Most cyclists are along the rail trail there, so most of the time they're not near the road. And yeah, it's not hard to see somebody because the visibility is so good. And you see congregation on Coates Road there quite often, people up around there. So I don't see it as an issue.
Do you ever see them caught out, like they're walking because traffic's approaching at 100 k's and they don't realise it's approaching at 100 k's. They're walking, and all of a sudden they're running with their bike or their dog or their small child
Yeah,
across the
no,
road.
I've never seen it. But I'll be quite surprised because obviously both parties should be looking where they're going. And you're in a 100k zone, you should be aware you're in a 100k zone, and get taught as a kid, both ways, that type of thing. It's not rocket science. And like I said, it's not areas that people are going to suddenly leap out onto the road in front of people. It's clear visibility all out there. So I don't see that as an issue. I don't think that me knowing that the cyclists there and watching out for them is any different to anyone else using that road. Yeah, I really don't see it as a safety issue. Yes, traffic's going faster, but people should be aware of that and adjust accordingly.
Questions? And that's what we're going to discuss about it later on.
All right.
10 times.
Yes.
We'll try.
Thank you very much.
James on now. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We have to leave. No?
No.
That'd be okay.
Oh,
hey, it's Wayne here from Central Otago District Council.
Yeah, I'm just watching you guys up.
Oh.
Looking at live stream, but I can watch you, but I can't actually say anything.
Well, I've got you on speaker now, and you can give your submission just on the phone here if you like.
Fantastic.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you, James. Stu here. I'm chairing the meeting today. So fire away and speak to your submission. Thank you.
Okay, so there's actually 4 roads that I want to talk to. The first one is one that I live on, Kenmure Road. The proposed current road speed limit. The proposal is to drop that to 60 kilometres. I support that in its entirety all the way to just past Carrick. The road is tricky and winding, and there's a whole lot more cyclists which would be getting on with their bikes and a lot more traffic in that area, but Bannockburn and then. But from the Carrick area on, the road opens up, the cyclists well off the track, the cycle trails disappeared. There's no parking. The sight lines are clear, and there's a lot of straights in there. So applying the same 60 kilometres an hour to that section, I think would be negative, and I don't think it's justified, given the fact that the road change is actually quite dramatically post Carrick. That's the first one. The second one is Pearson Road, and I think proposal is to drop that. And that road is straight. There are no blind rises. There are very, very few entrances and exits on that. The only other properly formed road is Sandflat Road. There's a very small number of domestic accesses on the road. It's a nice wide open road with nice wide open edges. The only tricky area is near the state highway, which is currently controlled with a reduced speed sign. The worst thing about that area is the poles are too close to the road. But again, that's not a road that justifies my opinion, having driven it a heap of times, being dropped from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour. In fact, the same thing applies to Sandflat Road as well, which is also very long, very straight, now partially sealed. There's one blind rise over near Highlands, which the only issue with that is when the speedway's on, and they control that with the traffic safety management plan when that event is on. So I again don't agree that the speed limit there needs to be changed from 100 to 80 kilometres an hour, which is the proposal. If it's just because it's a road, then same things needs to apply to all gravel roads, which I again don't agree with, because the gravel roads can be safely crossed at 100 kilometres an hour, in my opinion. And then again, the the second last road is Bannockburn Road. I think the proposal is to change it from 100 to 80. I don't have a problem with that at all. In fact, I support that. There's a lot of blind rises or passing areas. So I don't have a problem with that one, but I do on Rippenburn Road, where again the proposal is to change it from 100 to 80. There are a number more access parts, and there's some slightly awkward and unsighted areas. But that again, in my opinion, could be controlled with road markings, which it currently isn't, with yellow lines or double yellow lines that indicate that one shouldn't be passing those areas, because the road, with the way they're shaped, the risk is not so much the speed that's going on that road, but it's where the passing occurs. I believe that passing could be controlled with a signage rather than a speed limit.
Thank you very much for that. Pretty thorough. Any questions from the members? Tracy?
No,
Dana?
was pretty clear. No.
Right,
Thanks,
thank you very
James.
much for that, James. Sorry for the bit of a hold up getting you organised with technology, but no, we'll take those on definitely when we're going to deliberations later on. So thank you very much for your speaking of submission.
No problem at all. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Welcome everyone. All right. So for the people who weren't here before, my name is Phil Duncan. I'm chairing this meeting with Councillor Oakley and my deputy Tracy Patterson. So the procedure is basically speak to your submission, you get 5 minutes, and then we can ask you questions at the end of it. And yes, it's a big issue, so we've got a few bits and pieces of laws we have to deal with as well. So we're a bit ahead of time, but we'll go to submission reference number 86 and Kim. Park up over here and sit down and then take your mask off and tell us what you think.
Hi guys, I'm just here from Cambrian Road, up near St Bathans. We've been there for 7.5 years, I think, about that. But I was just surprised that the Cambrian Road wasn't in the speed change body we're doing it. It's open road through there, and I don't know if you guys have been there, but it's just a dead end road, so you go to and from. When we first got there, I think there was 5 permanent residents, and now there's 23 permanent residents. The road's not very wide. It has been eco-sealed now, so it's a bit safer than it was. I've been dealing with council since 2017 over the speed, not all the time, but just back and forwards. I've got emails here to back me up on that. And some of them have said that, which was bits by surprise, because I have, they have, back in February 2018, I had an email from Andy Bartlett, who knows not the council. I've been seeing probably 3 or 4 different people through roading in that time. And he said that Cambrian Road will be included in the CODC speed limit review, which we now got underway as a result of legal speed limit changes and locations across the district, blah, blah, blah. He came out with somebody else to the site and did agree that on these speed limits, so they've put people signs up and stuff like that. But so my son bikes a couple of k's to the bus stop, the school bus, back and forwards, and the road's dangerous. If a car comes, even at slower speeds, the verge is sort of lumpy, it's hard to get off. And I mean, for a child, it's probably easier than an old person that's on bikes. And a lot of people have got their e-bikes now, so they're using the road. I know of a couple of people that have fallen off and hurt themselves trying to get out of the road with cars coming up the road. There's not enough road for 2 cars to cross, so people have to go out into the grass. A lot of people walk. We're walking down the middle of the road because it's a little country road and there's no, the grass is quite uneven on the side, like we don't have a pathway to walk down. Most people walk dogs regularly. I know one person 3 times a day up and down that road. And the road's really busy now compared to it used to be. I mean, not like here, but when we were first there, we hardly see any cars, and now there's just cars all the time because of the domestic tourists and stuff like that. It's an open road, so it's a 100k limit. They don't do 100k's down there, obviously, but even doing 60, around that sort of speed is quite fast in a little area like that. I just really like it to be considered. There is signs down there that someone has put down, but I would just like it to be official. That it's and at the beginning I went to the NZ, the New Zealand roading thing. They said council said to try that for this, and they said it was council's responsibility to change the. I have got stuff here that you can read through, a couple of people saying, and then there was one from Tim, the mayor, saying that it was on the Cambrian Road was on the list too, so that's why I was just surprised it wasn't there.
Questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to, oh, sorry,
Okay, Tracy.
Yeah,
I'd
Tracy?
like to invite Julie to respond to that in relation to those.
I'm surprised it's not here either.
Attention. See, when you're thinking about the amount of traffic, what kind of percentage increase do you think in the time that you've been there, Kim?
Well, the first winter I was there, I'd be lucky for one car to go past during the week, you know, because there wasn't many people living there either.
Yeah.
But now there's tour buses, like big tour buses and vans, still vans going past. So you get 3 vans a day because the school's there.
Yeah.
You would have been there. The
Yeah.
school's there. People were attracted to the area.
For historical reasons.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot.
Yeah, most are, and there's been a lot of building going up there, so there's a lot of, and they're probably the vans that are speeding a little bit more. I've spoken to them, and I'm always speaking to people, telling them to slow down. Just because we've got little dogs, I ride horses up and down there. There's probably, I don't know, probably 10 horses that people ride up and down that road as well, and it's not a straight road, it's sort of a curved road, and I have grandchildren that come stay with me every holidays, so they stay, and the place fills up in the school holidays. I mean, it can be up to 80 people in Cambion Road over Easter and Christmas and the holidays. And the kids just, like the old days, they just walk down the middle of the road to go to the next person's place, or they all meet down at the school to play, and, you know, they should probably, you know, it just, yeah, just be better if it's a little bit safer and better signage maybe, and yeah, we want to keep it quaint and old, but slow people down.
Aside from those sort of people signs, are there any other signs there?
No. Oh, there is someone's put some speed signs down the bottom, but that wasn't council. I don't know who that was.
And the people signs, are they just people, or do they say watch for children or anything like that?
Just people, but we don't really like the signs because they're so modern and gross. We want it to keep, have you been out there?
Yes.
Yeah, we just want to keep it quaint and, yeah, so there's one sign there, and there was other signs, I think, I want to take them down for it. But, yeah.
So I don't think we're going to be able to magic up different signs
I
from the
know,
rest of the
yeah,
district.
no. We've come to that.
Unfortunately, we're not able to do that.
I've got my homemade signs I've put
Yeah.
on people's fences saying, you know, slow down children and adults that play. So I've got a couple of those up the road, but they're on private property, they're not on council land. But just because it's quirky and looks old and funny,
But as to speed, yes, we can.
yeah. Yeah, my son used to put cardboard boxes out in the middle of the road to slow people down, and they'd go around with cardboard boxes. Someone else's son did that.
Do you think 60 would be a good start? I mean, obviously people saying 40, but.
Yeah, but I'd like 50 if we could.
It's no longer a thing.
Is it not?
Yeah, no, we've changed everything, don't worry about that. World's a funny place at the moment.
You couldn't do 40 then?
Eh?
You couldn't do 40? It's 40.
We've got that discussion, but we have to discuss these issues, so it's what's important for people to speak to.
Yeah,
But we've equally got towns like yourself, and we've got other historic towns that want to keep it the same as what it is, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, this, if we preference is 60 to 40, you're saying
Yeah.
40.
40, because people still go a little bit faster than that. Like I drive up there under 50 and it seems a good speed to go, but yeah. 40, people always go a wee bit over, don't they?
Can I ask a
60.
question? So
Yes.
Sure.
what part of the road, the whole road, or just the bit where the township is?
Probably from where it's been eco-sealed for the first bits, but then yeah, because we did have, you know, counters and that for the speed, but they had them right down at the beginning of the road where people take off. And so I think it was averaging about 60 or something like that, but they had them right down at the beginning of the road. It wasn't up the road where people get speed up. And so that was done, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know, I'll find it somewhere.
All right, just been to think about. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Think back, give it a time up to come in because
Yeah.
everyone's busy.
Yeah. And I have got the support of everyone else, but I just I didn't have time to go, and if I need extra, I don't know. Yeah,
Thank you for taking.
thank you for that, guys. Right, I'm gonna head out, so enjoy the rest of it.
Perfect, yeah.
Martin. Submissive evidence.
Oh, no.
Right? Sorry. Tara. Oh, we got Karen, you got me, right? Come in. Yep. Well,
I'm sort of halfway here.
Yeah.
no, definitely. Tara's next. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
See you.
Yes.
Yeah, we go, yeah.
I want to, my submissions in respect of a section of Bannockburn Road, the portion that goes from the top of the hill coming up from the Bannockburn Bridge up to the top of the other hill that it intersects with Hall Road. There's about a 450 metre stretch of road, and it's controlled at the moment by two permanent 50 km/h signs at each end of that stretch, and also two relatively new electronic signs that advise you if you're travelling at over 50 k's when you approach either of those signs, and then it tells you what speed actually is when you drop below 50. Now, on that stretch of road, there are 17 exits of one form or another, some of them serving multiple properties down right-of-ways. It's my observation, and also the observation of neighbours who live on or associated with the road, that the 50k limit's not observed, and there's no policing of it. And the traffic density along the stretch of road has increased significantly, with an increase in building activity in Bannockburn, and also there's an increase in heavy traffic due to that increase in building activity as well. So it's very common now for the very large trucks carrying diggers to be going up and down the road. And, you know, the road itself has become much more dangerous in the last few years, particularly as the attraction of the cafe and the pub has increased, and also more recently with the start of the cycle trail. And in fact, you'll drive down Bannockburn Road now, and you go down the hill to when you go over the Bannockburn Bridge, and you'll find cyclists coming up towards you on their right-hand side of the road. And, you know, and there's nowhere to go, there's no refuge. Also, there are very difficult sight lines for people exiting their properties because of the fact that vehicles are often parked on the side of the road where there's no provision for parking on either side, and it's quite dangerous now exiting your properties. If it was slower, you'd have a lot more chance of if you miss someone coming down. There's also an increase in foot traffic across the road. People park their cars on both sides of the road, but on the far side they cross it to get to the pub or the cafe. And especially during summer, this is a sort of a summer and winter issue, I guess, but in summer it's particularly acute because I've counted over 20 cars parked on both sides of the road in the vicinity of the cafe and the pub at the height of summer. And in winter you'd think it would die off, but in fact it's not showing much sign of dying off now because of the increased traffic up and down the road. So my proposal is that the speed limit be lowered to 40 rather than 50, and that you try and find some clever way of ensuring that that's adhered to. And this has the support of a number of people in Bannockburn Road as well, in that section of Bannockburn Road. So that's my submission.
Thank you very, very much for coming on. Tanya,
Just you'd like to set 40 from the bridge?
No, I think that's a bit too much, really. But where the electronic sign is that when you're coming up from the bridge, if the 40k could start about there, because you're naturally slowing down when you get up the hill. If you really slow down and keep that speed along the flat, it's along the flat that's the critical area really. When you're going up the next hill up to Hall Road, you're probably going to pick up a bit of speed, but it's that flat bit that's the problem. Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, so if I'm looking at the map, we're coming up the hill, so It's beyond the, multi-domain road. It's beyond Hall Road, Domain Road?
No, no, it's the,
That's up there,
it's from the pub to Domain Road.
Yeah, so this bit here,
Yeah, that,
and then through here.
this is the
So
40.
Hall Road, this one here is the top of the hill.
Yes.
So you have 50 to 40,
I beg your pardon?
you go from 50 to 40.
No, it's 50 all the way at the moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
But I'm suggesting that
Yeah.
when you come up from the bridge,
Yeah.
that you're doing 80 k's or 100 k's along there, that you slow down then. But you can do that because it's a hill, and you can slow down in the normal course of events. So you're not asking people to put their brakes on.
So just to be clear, it's the existing 50k on Bannockburn Road that you're suggesting gets changed to 40k for that.
Yes, for that section of Bannockburn Road, yes.
Thank you very
And
much.
I just
Tamara,
had one final question, sorry. How often do you see the speed along that main part of Bannockburn Road policed?
Oh, pretty much every day. I mean, we live right on the road, and we are avid users of the cafe, so we see everything along Bannockburn Road. If there's more traffic, it tends to be slow, but it's the odd one going up and down that perhaps doesn't observe the limits as well as they might. So
Is it locals or visitors?
I can't tell. I don't know. Probably.
Often is the case, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and conversation. Darren. On there, oh, sorry, right up.
Karen, are you ready to go? You're on mute. Oh, yes, here we go, cool.
Well,
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Taryn Hall aho. Actually, before I start my submission, I'd just like to support what Kim said about the speed limit in Cambrian. Being from St Bathans, we do visit there often, and they have similar issues to us, I think. It's probably a 5-minute walk through Cambrian, but it took my family one day about 45 minutes to get through, simply because of all the people popping out to speak with us. And I think that that's a demonstration of a great community, but one that needs to be protected through lower speed limits. But now leave that opportunity and talk about St Bathans, which is what I'm really here to speak about. So I'd like to tell you why, for reasons of safety and to protect the special character of the village, the speed limit in St Bathans needs to be lowered. So the first reason to lower the speed limit is safety. I've been in the village for 6 years, and there's a lot more people in the village now. There has been a building boom over the last couple of years. We've got more houses. There are also more tourists. It feels like St Bathans has been on Stuff or the New Zealand Herald every second week. And so we're seeing more tourists come through even during COVID. There are always cars parked opposite the pub because there are people using the Great Dock walkway around the lake. There are always people walking there. One day in summer, went down to swim at the lake, and the cars were 5 rows deep down at the lake, which I've never seen before. And of course that creates a bottleneck when all the cars come out and pop out opposite the pub. So there is just a much larger flow of traffic now. Another thing that's happening in the village, as you'll know, is that the community association has leased the post office. So there's another attraction there for people. The effect of all of this is that we've got people wandering the length of the village. They're reading the great gold signs that we've got up. They're enjoying that facility. There are people moving in a steady stream from the pub up to the post office to see what's going on there. And there's parking opposite the post office now, so people are moving across there as well. And then, as I said, there's a natural bottleneck in that all of the lake traffic pops up opposite the pub. And the pub really is the heart of the village. It's famous, everyone comes to see it, and it's also a gathering place for locals and tourists. So that means you've got people constantly crossing the road there, also to get to the lake and to walk around the lake. People stand on the road. They stand there to take photographs. Sometimes they stand in the road because they've bumped into people and just want to chat. And I've even seen people sitting in the road to socialise. So that's the situation that we're dealing with. And in those circumstances, it's completely inappropriate to have a 50km/h speed limit. It's just too fast. Many people don't drive to the conditions, they drive to the speed limit. They see 50, and so they drive at 50 through the town and don't think what's around. You know, there are plenty of children there. You know, with the visitors, there's heaps, and in terms of residents, there's at least 4 children who visit the village regularly. And one day over the summer, I saw a contractor and a tractor ripping through the village at 50 kilometres, which was fairly terrifying. You know, if a child had popped out of the pub and dashed across the road to send its parents, the tractor wouldn't have had a chance to stop. Thankfully, it was fine on that occasion, but you do see things like that fairly often. Look, the second reason to lower the speed limit is to preserve the special character of the village. How many places are there in New Zealand where you can still just wander up and down the length of the village? Yeah, I've spoken about Cambrians, it's like that there too, and it's important to keep that. You wander down the length of the village, you bump into people, you know, it's like Cheers. You know, you go to the pub where everyone knows your name, but you get that the length of the village, not just in the pub. People can still let their children wander free. You don't need to be overly concerned, and you can give them just that little bit of responsibility to cross the road. But that doesn't work if people are going across at 50 and not thinking about who's around them. I've not been critical of the people who do stand in the road. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And it's part of what makes the village special, that we can do that and create that environment. But a 50km speed limit is just not consistent with that. And so I think that the speed limit should be 30 or 40 throughout the village, and as low as 15 to 20 in the stretch from the post office through to the old billiards hall, Bellamy's. So that's just past the pub. And I think that there should be some traffic calming measures to enforce that, because of course people do just ignore signs. So throw in a couple of speed bumps on either end of the pub, just to keep people going slower in that high traffic area.
That's your 5 minutes.
What was that, sorry?
That's your 5 minutes, so we can have questions now if you wish. Any questions, Tana?
No, thank you. That's great.
Tracy?
I do actually have a question, but it's probably in relation to asking Julie about your suggestion of a 20km/h. I don't know if that is actually such a thing. No. So I think the minimum that we can go to is 40, correct, Julie?
You can have 30.
You can have 30.
We have to do work on the road to make that happen.
To make that happen.
Just
Okay.
Just a question, if you talk about in keeping St Bathurst, it's just up the corner from where I live. I wouldn't think speed bumps would be in keeping with a historic town, would they? Like, you know, the gold mining towns didn't have speed bumps in those days. I just wonder whether that's a viable option or just, and would it be, in your feeling, would it be better if we kept the Cambrian and St Bathurst levels about the same? Like, so, you know, if it's 40 or whatever.
Yeah, I think it would make sense to keep Cambrian and St Bathurst the same. They've got similar issues that are facing them. And you might get people going from one village to the other. So, you know, it's easy to keep that in your head. Yeah, of course, old gold mining villages wouldn't have had speed bumps, but they wouldn't have had roads as good as ours either. I mean, I think, you know, they would have been full of potholes in the day, and that would have worked. You might get some people who do complain about speed bumps and say that it's not in keeping. You know, maybe you try lowering the speed limit first, and if that doesn't work, put in some speed bumps, or you could try it all from the start. You know, I'm not married to either idea, but I do think the speed limit needs to go down.
Well, thank you very much. We'll take that into account. We'll do our deliberations later on, and thank you for giving up the time to come and talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Right, next one I've got on the list is Barry Wills. Barry, welcome.
Hey,
For you people don't know, that Barry used to be the chairman of the road and I was his deputy. And my seat's still hot down there, is it? I don't know. So you know Tracy and Tony, Barry?
Yeah, tell me, how are you? Tracy, Julie? Yeah, so,
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so in terms of the general speed reductions that, you know, you're talking about around the district now, I don't have any particular issues with those. I think they're reasonable. You'll get plenty of feedback on that. What I want to concentrate on is firstly, this consistency business. Now, you know, just looking on the web last night, you've got a series of questions there. How speed limits reviewed and set, and there, so quite explicitly states that there's got to be consistency across the country. Well, I look at the list that you've put out in terms of the actual speed limits here. You've got 13 of them dropping down to 30 k's, and you've got 8 of them reduced to 50. I would like to see a consistency around the 20 kilometre an hour spacings between the speeds. I think, you know, to me that just makes logical sense to keep it down to that. So 180, 60, 40. And here in the last couple of submissions about St Bathurst and Bannockburn, about 40 kilometres within residential areas, I think that would make a heck of a lot of sense. So within urban areas overall, probably, you know, if you've got an industrial area or down the main streets, could remain 50, but certainly once you get into those residential areas where you've got a lot of kids, I would like to see that, you know, perhaps a blanket 40 k's. I think that would make a lot of sense. And when you think about areas like Bannockburn and St Bathurst, where, you know, we are intensifying our urban areas, even within Alex. I mean, we're going to see a lot more intensification over the future, so that would make a lot of sense down the line. There's mention of school zones too. I don't know that you guys have got a lot of say over that at this stage of the game, but I'd certainly support the 20 kilometre an hour limit there. At the moment it's 40 and 20 plus buses on. So yeah, really it's to encourage the use of these 20 kilometre an hour steps, make them consistent throughout the country, and get that message through to NZTA as well. Just to touch on a couple of other areas as well, when I was on the Road Transport Committee, Stu, and you might have had it since, but there's some silly things in terms of, and this comes back to consistency again, some silly things in terms of signage. There really are. I mean, take a look at that one here. That's Mahino. You know, I mentioned that at one of the RTC meetings way back, and nothing's happened to it. You're going out of Mahino, you've got 100 kilometres an hour on the hill going up. That yellow sign in the distance is 75 kilometres an hour. It's stupid to me. I mean, the 100 k's should be past that 75 kilometre an hour corner, up there in the corner where, you know, speed limits quite achievable. And even here in town, I mean, you know, we're not out of the limit here either. This is the Mount Street corner. Julie, you'll know it well. We've got a giveaway sign on one side and a stop sign on the other. And to me, that's silly, because you can sit there waiting at that stop sign for traffic clear, no one on the giveaway sign. Just as you get clear on your side at the stop sign, someone pulls up at the giveaway. Now, you know, you've got to give way to them because you're sitting on the stop sign. It should be, again, consistent. We should have a stop on both sides and a giveaway on both sides. So yeah, we need to look at that signage. And even travelling around the roads, you'll come some places, urban build-up areas, you'll suddenly drop to 50 k's. Some they'll give you a warning. Some you'll go down through, you know, maybe 70 k's down to 50 k's. It's just that consistency, so people know what to expect, you know, when they're coming into an urban area. So, if you can do that, if you have some influence over that, I say, you know, good luck. And yeah, I also see, and this is slightly outside this area, but the high productivity vehicles and their impact on our roads around here. And again, this is mainly state highways, it's not so much the local ones, but they are having a huge impact, and we're seeing a lot of deterioration in the roads. So that was a sort of an unexpected result of our decisions somewhat earlier. So that's my submission. Short and sweet, but if you can have some influence on that, well, good.
Thank you, Barry. Any questions for Barry?
I guess just around that consistency, because I agree, it's very confusing to people when you've got within one small community,
Right.
70s and 50s and 60s and
Yeah.
40s. And so you would be in favour of changing it all at the same time as opposed to as each road comes up? Because that's the direction that Waka Kotahi have indicated they want councils to be going, is the 80, 60, 40 areas.
Yep.
You would prefer to see the 50s and the 70s changed
Yes,
at the same time to be more consistent with that?
yes, I would. I mean, it probably will happen progressively, Tanner, but, you know, down the line, yeah, I think that's the way to go. You know, so everyone, particularly, you know, this area here, we've got a lot of tourists and they come into the area and yeah, it can be quite confusing. Particularly camper vans, you know, large vehicles, that sort of thing. And the number of, high productivity vehicles that are on the road nowadays, you know, so you've got a lot of congestion on some of our roads here. And particularly, and cyclists too, as has been pointed out, the trails around the area. So I think just, you know, long term, it makes sense. It'll probably happen progressively, but I think that's the, you know, that's the way to go. And that, I'd certainly encourage that anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, just, we had an earlier submission which, in relation to driver behaviour and trying to encourage driver behaviour and potentially for us to put up warning signs of impending change
Right.
in zones. So what's your thoughts about, I mean, obviously we touched on that briefly. Have you got any thoughts on how that would be, viewed positively, negatively? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Omakau, as you come into Omakau, you've got the warning signs either side of that. That's one of the few towns around here where you get that warning. Roxbury, you get an 80k and then you're down to 50. You know, I don't have a problem with either of those methods, but again, it should be consistent across not only the region, but also the whole country.
So do you think that would help if we had more warning signs? Would it help driver behaviour, or not that we can control it, but do you?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a difficult one because we sat around the table here some time ago and there was a big push on for reduction in signage on roads, right? There's a hell of a lot of signage out there on roads and a lot of it you can't read, going at even 80 kilometres an hour. So yes, you've got to be a little bit careful about how you know, too much signage, too confusing. So I think I'd probably stump for a reduction from 100 to 80, you know, and down that way, 160, and then down to 40 within residential areas, rather than the warnings, because people are still, with the warning, they're still travelling at speed, coming up to the final, speed limit. I think rather than warnings, you go for the reductions.
What's your view on how it works at that's a Marco's one, because it's quite different because you're rural, and then you're in town. And it's very obvious that you're in town from that point.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on those ones where you're not sort of building up like you get at that northern end of Roxborough where there's more houses and more houses and then town?
Well, yeah, it's. I think I prefer still to see just a gradual speed reduction there rather than that warning sign, because coming in Waikato, you go around that sharp corner. It's a bit of a blind corner. But if you come in from the Ida Valley, you get no warning. You just hit the bridge, the single one-way bridge, there's no warning, and then bang, you're on the 50. So yeah, I'd rather just see it step down on the tank. Pretty good. I think that's the logical way to go about it. Warnings are all very well, as I say, but people still travel through warnings at speed. And I mean, I look at even speeds here in town. People are often, particularly at Cincinnati, they're doing a hell of a lot more than 50. It's quite regular, and there's a number of people on that road trying to cross it. You try and walk across it. You know, we do a lot of walking around town. It's damnably difficult to get across it. You've got to be eyes in the back of your head, literally, in places. We probably need more roundabouts still in Main Street too. I won't cross that one.
You're trying to make things hard for us.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thanks for giving the time, Barry, because it's always good having that wealth of experience coming along and checking on us newbies.
No.
So, you know, we've got plenty in the roading space. We've got plenty going on, and trust me with that. With what we have, so we'll be trying to do the right thing. But there's a general themes coming out, but it's great to have your experience come back and tell us what you think. Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to see
Cheers,
you.
guys.
And then Ross. Welcome. Come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fire away.
Right, I'm going to be the spokesperson, so on behalf of Ross and myself, we would like to commence our presentation today with the following excerpt, which was given here almost 4 years ago to the day. And today we're here to discuss the very same thing. So 4 years ago, it was to comment on the Clyde 10-year plan, and the proposed speed limit in parking was part of that. So Ross was an inaugural member of the Clyde Development Group and has always been concerned about the speed limit, particularly through the commercial precinct of Clyde. Having worked hard for many years to get the speed reduced to 30k, it was pleasing to us both to see that that had been included in the plan, together with additional parking, particularly angle parking in Sunderland Street, which hopefully will reduce the parking impact in the shopping precinct. Due to the increased tourist activity in Clyde and it also being used as a shortcut route bypassing Alexandra to the Lakes District, we would strongly encourage that a 30k zone be implemented forthwith. I believe there is more than sufficient evidence that a reduction to 30k now meets any criteria that may be established at local and national level. So that was 4 years ago. So from memory, I think it was the same as with other times when this had been raised, and we were advised that it wasn't straightforward to proceed with that, and that you would have to consult with Waka Kotahi and others that would be affected. Well, I'm sure that, you know, you're all very aware that 4 years on, the congestion and the number of people and modes of transport, we thought the problem was large then, but it's now an enormous issue. This has been compounded by the ever-present upheaval of roadworks due to the installation of water and sewage, the opening of the new bike trail numbers, which, as you all know, were grossly underestimated to what has happened, and the increased domestic tourists visiting the town, and that's just to name it. Along with this is the continuation of the shortcut route through Clyde from Earnscleugh, passing through to town to reconnect with the state highway. We would really ask why this is taking so long and don't know whether anyone can answer that. We've spoken with personnel at Waka Kotahi and understand it is not them that is holding this back, and they would be highly in favour of a very reduced speed limit within Clyde. We've also spoken with engineers who design subdivisions where they recommend all new subdivisions have 30k or even less. We've looked at lots of different areas throughout the country, cities, small towns, the list goes on, and the biggest factor for them, of course, is safety, and that has also been mentioned this morning within other areas. They are able to reduce the speed limit, yet we continue with a 50k in the main street of Clyde. Even while the roadworks have been going on, very often there is a sign at the dam end of the town indicating that it is still 50. So going through the main street, yet at the other end in places it still shows 30. So again, we've talked a bit about consistency this morning. It's making sure that, you know, when people are coming from the Cromwell end, that they do know that it's a reduced speed limit going through there. We've also noticed, particularly with the many cyclists and the increased use of electric bikes, that many arrive the day before departing and practice with their electric bikes within all of the hire facilities that are available. Not perhaps a suitable thing to do within the main street, but traffic, you know, they're going straight into traffic at 50k. So just to conclude, the last time I sat here, I sort of said that we could probably change the signs tonight, and those that were sitting around the table were actually horrified by that. But, you know, we see that as something that needs to be done immediate and not wait. And I'm sure that people around here don't want to wait to see an accident happen or something that's much worse. So that's our submission.
Thank you very much. No, it's definitely, you take back 4 years when you talk about that, things have changed a lot. There's a lot of movement of traffic and bike parks and everything. So the general theme of today's definitely been about slowing speed limits down and the growth of numbers of people walking and cycling, so.
Well, interestingly, it was 20 years ago when we first raised this with council through the development group. At the time, we'd done research and we'd looked at other towns and cities throughout the country and noted that they had started reducing down to 30, and Dunedin at the time was a good case, and we actually approached the planners from the Dunedin City Council to see what their rationale was, and they came back to us and said, well, Clyde was in fact a typical example of an area that needed to be reduced to 30 because of the protrusions on the roads, the traffic that parks there, particularly large four-wheel drives and the like. So we've been waiting a long time since those initial approaches to council.
I would not like to, some people have mentioned 40, 40 is too fast. People coming through, they'll still be doing 50. So you've only got to look at people travelling from using it as a bypass route. The faster they can get through, the better.
The locals are very good, and again, I think I discussed with council staff here, and they said we need to do a study and sit there and analyse the number of people going through and what speed they were going through at. In fact, I've gone down and looked, and most locals go through at 30, but sadly it's the bypasses that shoot through. They offer nothing for Clyde. They just use the shortcut to get to Wanaka or Queenstown as quickly as possible. And they're the ones who are going to be the major problem, particularly when you've got the high level of activity of cyclists and associated vehicles with them around the area.
I would just like to say thank you for your perseverance over the last 20 years. And I just wondered if you are happy with the indicated on the maps that were put out for the consultation, the area that's been indicated for a 30 zone. Did you feel like that was the appropriate place for it to be?
That's from the 4 square shot.
So it's this spot here.
Yes. So that's just coming out
In here.
All of the blue area.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Happy with that?
Yes. But we, like the previous speaker saying, about dropping them at different speeds, I think that it can't be any higher than 30.
Well, thank you very much for giving up your time, and we do listen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, since Barry's vacated the job, it's been tricky, but a lot of these things come up a lot, and we've got some towns coming up that want to take them, leave them the same, so.
I might have to make my own sign, but that won't happen.
We hope we're listening anyway, we're trying to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for giving
Can
up
I
your time.
quickly just ask a wee question outside that Hazlitt Street? That was tar sealed a year or so ago, and it's the most noisiest tar seal I've ever known. It sounds like a Panzer brigade goes up and down during the day. I don't know what the mix was they put on, but it's extraordinarily noisy for an inner town road.
Wouldn't know yet, wouldn't it be?
Very heavy gravel.
It's a heavy aggregate.
It's a very heavy gravel.
And it is very noisy. We've got double glazing in our house, and we're actually just slightly off Hazlitt Street, but the noise is still horrendous coming through at night time, especially when the larger vehicles are
Yeah,
going.
some of the four-wheel driving that are very noisy and rubber when you get driving past.
Yeah, so
The
just
type of vehicles changed a lot in the last 10 years too,
Yes,
it's got to be
yeah.
four-wheel drive.
Yeah, it just didn't seem appropriate for a suburban street. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Simpson.
Public service announcement. Anyone who might be driving a Toyota Camry registration HUU 676, can you please move your car? Anyone?
What speed limit of parking at you?
One by all of the time.
Simpson, please.
Morning.
Morning.
More, well, thank you. So I'm Sam Securo. I live on the Clyde end of Onslow.
So really my submission and talk is about that end of the Ernst-Blue speed limit changes. I work at Dunstan Hospital with one of the doctors. And I have 3 tamariki that go to Clyde School. And I guess, you know, I'm really supportive of the changes that have been proposed. I think lowering the speed limits has multiple benefits in many different aspects. And it also, I think the big picture is, you know, we live in a beautiful community. I think Central Otago is unique and we love the community. And I guess looking at the big picture is that reducing the speeds is going to enhance the attractiveness and the community of the area. Because, you know, like the previous presentations talked about, there's a lot of through traffic that goes from Dunedin to Wanaka and Queenstown. And Ernst-Blue is mostly 100 and it's a straight way, so you get a lot of high speeds there. And, you know, that really needs to be, I think, at the Clyde, and it has to be slowed down further. Now it's at almost at the bridge. So it's basically 100 to the bridge, and you get lots of people coming really fast around the corner. And, you know, so high speeds create, you know, a lot of noise. You know, we have more native birds and native plants, so you get a lot of bird songs. So if we have cars going much slower, you can actually hear the nature that is around. You have time to look at the beautiful scenery that is around. You know, Lionel has his train track and all kinds of attractions there. So reducing that speed is going to have people enjoy that. And really for us, the big thing is safety. You know, there's more houses, more families living on the Clyde end of Ernst-Blue, and a lot of kids are walking and biking to school. The changes that have been done on the side of the road, so we don't have to walk on the road, is really good. But it's really, because the 50 now ends on top of the hill, it's really dangerous for kids to cross the road. And we want kids to walk or bike to school, which is really important. And why do we want kids to walk to bike to school? Is one, well, they're better students. There's a lot of good science showing that instead of being driven to school, if the kids walk or bike, they actually wake up, they're engaged, they're alert, they learn much better during that school day. You know, it makes them exercise. You know, sports is a big thing in Central. So just doing that daily routine is really good for their health. They eat better and they learn better. And they create that community of physical activity, which is, I think, is important. And we've noticed with our kids walk and bike to school every day. There's more and more kids coming along, even from further afield, which is really good. They can use the river track to do that, but that road remains the big risk. And we did do a petition a few years back about the locals, and the locals were very positively supporting the limit reductions on that. Then also, I think it's important to, you know, resilience, you know, making your way to school is really important for the kids. And also, I think in the long term, it's important to say that we need to change how we move around, and walking and biking is important, and just not driving cars. And then, I guess that's the main things. I think the current proposal of 50 taking it past sort of the Picnic Creek is good, but I almost think that it should be first 70 and then down to 50, because especially with the out-of-towners, they see that 50, so they already start accelerating and they hit 100 before they hit that 50. And same thing, they don't slow down in time. So I think there should be, because there's a long, you know, straightaways, reducing it down to 70 first and then down to 50. That's going to slow them down, because that Picnic Creek and all the roads from the subdivisions are getting busier. And that is just a dangerous point for other locals as well. So I think that's sort of the gist of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Yeah, thank you. Now, with we heard earlier from Mr. Davidson with regards to bringing that 50k zone out to Hawksburn Road, around that area. Do you think that would, extending that 50 kilometre zone there would be enough?
I think so, as long as you have 70 down, because, you know, 50 to 100 is, you know, I know that the locals will drive slow, but it is the people, they just see it as a target and then they accelerate.
So we did have some discussions, and you obviously weren't here for that point, so
No.
that, which is fine. So, but there is, and with those transitions are not as easy to do anymore. So what we did discuss is about having the possibility of signage up to say, there's a 50 zone coming ahead, which gives you that, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but the NZTA is looking at the 20 kilometre reductions, speed limits throughout New Zealand. So as things change, Julie, I might ask you there, can we extend a 50, or is that permissible, or?
So the proposal at the moment is to extend the 50 out to Hawkesbury and
Yeah.
Bold. Where we've extended 50s further out in the past, that's not been very successful at all. We have a number of locations where it's just non-smooth, and it kind of makes a mockery of someone's speed limit in the first place. You need to follow up on what the process is in transition, because it has changed under the recent, there's been recent legislation changes around how we set speed limits. So it's not the same as when we used to have those transitional zones, so we need to just check out that.
And you know, now they have put a sign actually on our roadway signs of 50 up. But I don't think, you know, the local town, out of towners, I don't think they just hit it to the 50 and then they slow down. I think extending that 50 the further you can is good, and that even if there's a warning for them to slow down. And I know the local police, you know, they tend to sort of sit there, which is always good. I appreciate that, to catch those who are not listening to that, so.